This is the Time Is Now podcast, presented by IRG.
Welcome to the Time Is Now podcast, hosted by your team at IRG. I am your host, Justin Villa. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about a different topic. Normally, we kind of stick to the projects and pre-constructions in our area, but we're going to talk about a little bit of a different topic based on the fact that a lot of our clients are international. With us today, I have two guys from the IRG team, Ivan Hagen and Luis Victor Villalobos. And joined with us today, we have, technically, she's a part of the IRG team at this point. She's worked with a lot of our agents and a lot of us with our closings, transactions, legal help. We have Cristina Ortiz. How are you?
I'm great. We actually just closed a deal a few minutes ago.
Awesome.
With one of your agents.
Perfect. So just introduce yourself, give a little bit of background of who you are, what you do, and that way we can give the best information to our clients.
Sure. Well, my name's Cristina, and I am a real estate attorney. I have a title company here in Florida, and I've been in business 15 years already. So quite a long time, and my niche here has been with internationals, foreign buyers, foreign sellers. Actually, when I opened up my law firm in 2014, most of my clients were from Venezuela, believe it or not.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. And you're like me, born and raised in Miami.
Yes.
So we're a rare species here, but it's definitely it helps with your background. Just so let's talk a little bit about some of these new laws and things that have come into place and new statutes that have been kind of solidified with these international clients. Because I mean, people want to know, right? I mean, Miami is such a hot market right now, and if we have a restriction for some of these countries and things like that, I think people like to know.
Yeah, it's been about a year since May of last year when the Bill 264 was passed. There was a lot of hoopla around it because, yes, it was restricting certain buyers, which sounds discriminatory. But these countries on the list were North Korea, Cuba, Venezuela, China, what else did we?
Russia.
Iran, Syria.
Russia.
Yeah, exactly. And it was specifically for Florida because I know I haven't had, we've talked about the OFAC list, and there's all these special real estate laws, taxes that apply to foreign buyers and sellers. But this is specifically for Florida. And why did it affect the real estate market so much? Is because people were scared or afraid or wondering how it was going to affect real estate. Most of our, you guys know more than I do, especially with the luxury pre-construction stuff that you guys do, the buildings, most of your investors are foreigners.
Yeah.
So, you know, when we're talking Venezuela and some of those other countries, it was something that people were scared about, but
People panicked.
yeah, but let me tell you, I mean, all that it really did was that the bill was passed about a year ago. It was going to be effective in July of 2023, and the Florida Association of Realtors, FREC, and the Department of Agriculture are the three agencies or departments that were put in charge of setting forth the guidelines, and the really all it came down to were forms that the title companies and brokers had to just be aware of. And that's it. That's what, in the last year, my practice has been affected. If I have a closing, which I just did with Rafael, our buyer is from another country, not one of those countries, but he had to sign a affidavit.
Okay.
It's an affidavit. It's a notarized affidavit as an affiant saying that, you know, he's aware of Florida Statute 693. Because after the bill was passed, that's what the statute came to be known as, 693, and it is basically governing foreign principals buying property in Florida.
What happens if a buyer signs that affidavit and say he's lying? You know, yeah, I'm from Venezuela or from Cuba, and I still go ahead and do it. And what happens when he gets caught?
Well, the subject property is subject to forfeiture. That's
Okay.
number one. They could be criminally and civilly liable as well.
Okay.
And let's take it further because the four of us are professionals, agents, attorneys. Sometimes we're the buyers and sellers, but we're the ones with these clients. If it's found that the realtor knew or should have known, really knew that this person was indeed from one of these countries, they could be liable as well.
And what happens if let's say I bought a property, I'm from Venezuela, and I bought a property right before this law passed?
And that happened.
What happens to, I'm like in the gray area.
You just had to disclose it by December, I think, of last year. That's all. It's all about disclosure.
So
the government just wants to know, get in everyone's business.
Because people were panicking. Like clients we had say, "What do I do now?" Because I'm hearing that if I don't do something, I might be liable to a fee of like $1,000 a day or something like that. I know it was something like very outrageous.
Yeah, I remember I don't remember the exact amount.
Something like that. It was
of the penalty, but you were just required to disclose it to, I think it was the Department of Agriculture and Department of Consumer Affairs as well. Okay. If you already were an owner.
So basically, just go click on the link, just say, yes, I'm an owner of XYZ property, and that's it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So you register, right?
Yeah. Just
For
register
us, what's really easy is you could just go to I think it's the Florida Association of Realtors. They have those forms. It's a simple 1-page, 2-page disclosure affidavit that you do.
Now, from your professional point of view, do you think this is something that's going to, stay forever, or is this something that it's all these appeals from? Because, like we were talking before the start of the podcast, you were saying that some of these countries are like appealing to this to be something that is discriminatory.
People from those countries
who
do want to buy or have bought in Florida have already appealed it. Nothing has come to be decided yet, but they are under review. I remember right away. I'm not sure what group, but it was either a group of investors or buyers or students from China that were the first to appeal it.
Yeah, because I think they were like the first ones to like start buying, like right after they started buying is when this bill and stuff started to come out, because I think it was like that they bought like a ridiculous amount of land in Homestead, which
is
then
agricultural
like the
land
agricultural land exactly.
Yeah.
So the people started to freak out. So like I guess like that group that invested
triggered
or bought or whatever triggered everything, and then it was just a spiral from there.
No, but there's some specifics you were mentioning about if I buy a property that is within a certain range of government
exactly. If you look at the actual language, there's a 5 or 10 mile radius that you're forbidden to buy. If you're a foreign principal, you're forbidden to buy
like
within an airport,
military base or something.
The Turkey Point, the Port of Miami. But I mean,
pretty much
everywhere in Miami. We're all near water, we're near a port, we're near an airport. So
everything qualifies to fall into that.
I believe it or not, and I work with a lot of foreigners, I have not had to deal with a real estate transaction where I had a buyer that did not comply with the statute. So I just do the affidavits and get their passports, and I'm in compliance.
Right.
So we'll see. I mean, I know that there's an exception where if you're a minority shareholder or stakeholder in an entity that is the buyer, you're okay. You just can't be a majority shareholder of that entity who's buying.
Now, would that apply even if I reside legally in this country? Like say I'm from Venezuela and I'm a legal resident, can I buy it? That wouldn't affect me?
No, it wouldn't.
So if it is just if I live abroad?
If you live, your primary residence is in one of those countries, it does apply.
Okay.
And to answer your question, you asked if I think this is going to last forever. Maybe not, but it's always going to have a different version. I've been talked about OFAC. In addition to this bill that came out about a year ago, I've been dealing with something called the GTO, which is the geographical. The GTO basically, I don't know what it stands for. I forgot right now, but it's that I, as a title agent, am responsible for disclosing to the state when a company is buying a property over $300,000 in cash. So an LLC, I have to disclose who the individual members are, and that came about after the Panama Papers.
Okay.
So there's always going to be some sort of regulation of foreign investors, especially here in Florida. We're lucky because we have all of that traffic, and IRG specifically has done very well with their foreign investors. But it's just a form of regulation. So I don't know if this specifically is going to last forever, but some version of it will.
And I don't know how. I mean, I figured something like this had to happen because Miami is right now like a pandemonium. Everybody wants to be here. Everybody wants to buy in Miami. So it's like it's a huge amount of traffic of buyers trying to buy few properties that are available. So that's why so many projects are going on. And I guess this is just going to get tighter and tighter as the time goes on.
Well, what's good is that there's so many filters too. Anyway, when even if you're a foreigner, whether you're getting financing or not financing, or you're getting approved by an association, there's some sort of disclosure that you as a buyer have to do, some sort of like filtering process. So, like I said, some way there's going to be some regulation on foreign investment here.
And you can see it in the history, how things have been changing. Because I remember back in the late 80s, early 90s, people would come and buy like, $1 million property cash. Basically, no questions were asked at that time.
Exactly, that's where that GTO came from, that requirement that I have to disclose who's buying these properties cash. And they put in an LLC or in some sort of company. And now I have to
worked around the thing. And
I mean, maybe there are, but the individual members do have to be disclosed.
Yeah, I think we had to have some sort of filter, right? I mean, we've had we went to the IPS about 2 or 3 weeks ago, the Miami report of Q1, and it was like 1,000 people a day moving to Florida. Like there has to be some sort, there has to be some sort of filter, and I think it's gotten to that point where they're starting to see like, okay, maybe we've had to have this filter maybe a few years ago, because like Luis Victor was saying, basically people were coming, they were buying in cash and getting out of here just to have a residence here or a second home or vacation home or whatever it was. But I mean, now for domestic like people and investors and buyers, it was difficult, right? I mean, even after the pandemic, how many properties were purchased in cash?
Yeah.
So I mean, I guess they had to kind of slow the roll of investors and people and foreigners coming with wads of cash, saying, "Here, I want it." But it's definitely interesting because I mean, our office here, we're very diverse. We have a lot of international clients and international agents as well. So it's funny how some of these countries that are now on this list are where we're from. So it's been an interesting, I think, thing that we've had to kind of adapt to, because I mean, we have a majority of our realtors are Venezuelan. We have a few Cubans. Like it's just something that I think we've had to learn and adapt and grow, because it's, as of right now, it's the norm. It's what's sticking.
You know, actually, when I was talking about this about a year ago, because it had just come out, and the 3 departments that were put in charge of putting out the regulations and the actual rules what to follow, my colleagues or people that I work with that are from Venezuela and Cuba were actually like, yeah, of course, that should be happening. They got it. They understood why the state of Florida was doing that. So that was interesting. And then another point of interest is that this, according to the state and the governor, this wasn't to like reduce foreign movers. It was a security thing. Yeah. And that's what they're using to get around this being unconstitutional or discriminatory. Because if it was pure discrimination against those countries, it would be unconstitutional. And the state of Florida at the time was saying this is for our security. Yeah. So it's not an economic thing; it's a security thing, according to the state.
All the fuss is because it got everybody caught everybody off guard. It was like, I wasn't expecting this, and now what's going to happen? Right? It was like, oh my god.
Yeah. So I agree.
Once you kind of digest it and think it over, and then you talk like professionals like you kind of understand why it had to be done. I mean, we as realtors saw it from another angle. But when you really we want to do business, but then we feel like, okay, they're interfering in my chances of selling something, right? Especially for us that deal with international clients. So, but like I say, once you digest it, and it's, it had to be done, like you said.
What is your experience as realtors when you have a client who's from Venezuela? Are they usually residents here or in other countries?
We have a lot of them that live here or live in other countries different than Venezuela, and I guess that wouldn't apply for them. Wouldn't apply for them. But we also do have some that live there, and they want to invest here, and now they find that they have this obstacle in their way. So there's something that nothing we can do about it.
Right, it's the law for now. It's being appealed, but it's the law for now. We have to follow it.
But nothing is written in stone, in the sense that this is just a reflection of the current geopolitical landscape in the world. And a lot of these countries could be there temporarily and could work their way up into, coming to some sort of agreement. In the case of Venezuela has deep roots in real estate. Developers started here in the 70s, and through that progression, we've seen people go from foreigners to residents to be deeply ingrained in the Miami fabric. Same with Cubans and Russians and a lot of people that are on this list. I'm hopeful that once these global political items subside, then there should be a clearer sense. And I'm sure there's plenty of legal avenues for, let's say, Venezuelan nationals wanting to become residents. And where would they fall? Where would any one of these nationalities fall in terms of, are they different? Where would they fall in terms of, if they're already seeking legal avenues to become residents? Are they in a loophole? Are they?
No, there's no loophole. The status is official. They're not official residents or citizens yet. Therefore, they would fall under the realm of having to disclose or not being able to buy if they couldn't.
Even if they live here?
Oh no, if they live here, but how do they live here? Like they live here and they're pending. They're here temporarily.
They're on TPS, whatever, or they requested asylum or whatever. They would be able to buy if they live here.
That's a good question. I think they still have to provide the disclosures of the status and all of that to not be under Florida Statute 693, a foreigner principal who lives primarily in another country. That was one of the I guess requirements, or the people banned from purchasing here.
Okay.
Yeah, especially people also who have affiliations with government, like you're part of the government in.
That one is clear.
Yeah, that one's a given.
Clear. Actually, these people they've been people that used to work for the government, like in case of Venezuelan government, and they came here with monies that were not clearly.
Exactly. I think that's why my Venezuelan peers were like, this is a good law because it was happening. The former government officials who now live here and were buying properties with that money.
But internally, a lot of our financial structures regulate that in banking through what they call PEPs, or politically exposed. So internally, a lot of the banking mechanisms already are making sure that whoever's coming, it fits all these boxes in terms of.
You mean also when they just even open a bank account? Correct.
As terms of anti-money laundering, OFAC, KYC, know your customer, or politically exposed parties, and the proper understanding of their relationships in their native countries. So
filters, I call them filters. We're always, the state, the federal government is always doing their process.
Before this law, we're talking actually pre-COVID, banks were already taking action because they don't want to be liable for things, like opening an account for somebody that is questioned, to be like a government representative or a former government employee that made millions of dollars, and they're pretending to come to the States, especially to the city or in the state, and just pretend like nothing happened. So banks were aware of this because the government is right on it, or was right on it. And I remember I came back from Venezuela to state in 2018, and I used to have an account in a bank that I'm not gonna say the name of the bank. And but I was like, I was there. I didn't have much movement, and I went back to my debit card. It was like expired or whatever, and I went on to I renew it. And the lady told me that, no, I'm sorry, you're from Venezuela, I cannot renew your account. I mean, actually, I'm going to give you a check for whatever is your account, and we're closing it. You say, why? I've been a client of this bank for 18 years. How are you going to? It's a new policy of the bank. And so they were on to it before even this came about. So I guess, we'll have to learn to live with it.
Right.
And we're a product of globalized banking. Once FATCA was introduced, and it slowly permeated in all aspects related to finance, and real estate is it's a natural progression of the understanding that as we move along, we're part of globalized banking and a system where we want checks and balances for the people that are integrated into the fabric of our city.
Cristina, what would you, if you were to give like a little tips or advice to somebody that is a foreigner, and that maybe it's national of one of these 6-7 countries, what would you suggest them to do?
Number one, consult with an attorney, because perhaps their situation is not what they think it is. Perhaps there is a loophole that applies to them on the accounting side or on the legal side, or perhaps they already have a property here which gives them some roots. So you never know. But if you look at the rules, they have been set as far as they're pretty clear to follow. But again, the realtors, also real estate agents, the professionals that support the buyers and sellers, but more the buyers, are also always seek counsel from an attorney.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is EB5 out of the question for all of these countries, or?
It's a good question. I'm not sure. I imagine so. The EB5, well, I'll give you my personal opinion. I'm not a huge fan of EB5 investments or projects.
Would you
That's a different
explain
podcast.
what an EB5 for people?
An EB5 is a type of investor visa that for people who want to seek some sort of either citizenship or residency. They are making a minimum amount of investment into a project that, for example, hits the marks according to legal and the IRS. So usually it's something that creates a certain number of jobs here domestically, and it's also in an area that needs economic development, economic support. They're usually very lengthy. It's a long process, and they're usually very expensive and do not have any guarantees. So for those reasons, I'm weary of EB5 investments.
Yeah.
But that's a very good question. I have not researched myself the relationship between this bill and EB5. I have not.
Well,
but you're right. I had so many. Back in 2015, I was dealing with a lot of EB5 investors, and they were from China. So that's a good question. I hadn't even
looking ways to how to permeate into the local market.
And funny enough, we were in the beginning of, or actually towards the end of last year, we were gonna go to China to do.
You told me that before the marathon last year. I said, "Oh, you're going to be going to China, going back to Dubai," and you said, "Oh, let's see what happens with this bill."
Yeah,
and it was passed.
The next month. We just didn't end up going. But I mean, even for Dubai, I think Saudi Arabia is on that list. I mean, we were lucky when we went, because I mean that was passed a few months right after.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's changed a lot of marketing strategies for a lot of teams, and definitely a lot of visits that a lot of companies and teams had kind of planned out, but it's something that we've had to adapt. It's here, and for right now it's here to stay, and we just gotta work around it. It's basically it.
Does this apply only to individuals, or also to LLCs or corps? Or
some of the language there does say that if it's a company that is majority owned by a foreign principal from one of these countries, it also applies.
So if they were a minority, then it's
no. That's one of the exceptions. If they're a minority shareholder of a domestic company. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Yeah.
The great thing is it's not a one size fits all in terms of immigration, and I can imagine that you have a full repertoire of options for people seeking to make their stay permanent here, and we have a very good understanding of how to integrate people, and maybe not now, down the line, in terms of investment and solidifying their finances in real estate in the U.S. We're in Florida.
Right. Understood. Yeah, I agree. And again, your question was very good. Will this last forever? There's going to be revisions and different versions.
Mutations, I
Yes.
guess it will be
Exactly.
accommodating according to what happens in the local market.
Right. When I started my practice in 2014, I think the next year they said that this GTO that I had also mentioned was going to be temporary. And it's still here, and it's basically permanent. And that came about, again, right after the Panama Papers, where people were doing these offshore companies, and you never knew who the real owner was. And if you had to sue someone or collect against someone, you could never find them. That's where that GTO came about, and it's still in place.
Yeah, because of that.
10 years later, right? Yeah. It's been 10 years.
Other countries are still accepting, Panama Papers.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
But it's
the US
it's
had
in,
to do something.
remember the bill that we're talking about is only for Florida, and I think that's what really set people off, because it was now a targeted thing for Florida. It wasn't a national thing.
Yeah.
Well,
Very interesting.
Yeah.
I think it's very informative. I think we've kind of hit a lot of marks. And obviously, if you guys have any questions, you guys know where to reach us. Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Music. I can go on forever. But definitely, thank you so much.
Where can we find you, or they can find you if they want more legal information or legal advice?
Well, I don't know if you could share like my phone, the office number, or if not.
I'll add also your Instagram in the description so that they could reach out to
perfect. So
the
Instagram, believe it or not, has been a way I communicate a lot through Instagram. But if not, the office number is 305-702-2797, and that's another great way too.
Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Well,
But thanks for having me.
Cristina.
Thank you so much, Cristina. Thank you guys for being on the podcast. And remember, the time is now.
This is the Time Is Now podcast, presented by IRG.